Hi and welcome to the second week of cross-platform journalism. In the first week we asked you to set up a group of pages and accounts that will be of use as the module goes on, and this week we're going to start looking at how you can use those platforms in a slightly more advanced way than the average user, with the idea being how to maximize your exposure across platforms, but similarly how to minimize time spent looking for relevant information or keeping in touch with relevant contacts. As I say, this is what we're going to do this week. It's not going to be the most time intensive exercise. After listening to this, it may take you about an hour or so just to set things up and have them in place. As always, if you have any issues or any problems, please don't hesitate to drop me an email. Please don't hesitate to get in touch by Twitter or any other method. And the main reason behind this is that a little planning at the start can go such a long way. One of the joys of journalism very often is that you just get to jump into a story or jump into something to break it and develop it. And you pull in facts during the story gathering process, and occasionally you get to pull in things afterwards as well, background research and extra information that's needed. With social media and cross-platform, it can be very useful to have basics in place, a good foundation to start with for moving forwards, and that's what we're doing today. Consider last week the idea of buying a property and saying, right, this is where I want to be. This week we're putting down the foundations at where you want to be. And one of the first essential things, whether you're doing a blog for yourself as part of your workload or anywhere else, is having some form of editorial calendar. Now, calling it a social media editorial calendar is a little bit pretentious, but as you can see from the slide here, the idea is that you go, okay, on a Sunday I'll do this, on a Monday I'll do this, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday I'll do certain things. Perhaps have something for Facebook, I'll have something for Twitter, something for the blog, something for YouTube. You plan it out, and obviously that's not a luxury you always have, but as professionals, we've all managed to plan our weeks. Breaking news happens, but most of us have an idea. Okay, Wednesday I'm going to try and chase this story. Thursday I'm going to try and develop this. And if you can do the same with your digital life, it's a very useful tool to be able to do. Obviously, you don't have to be on every platform every day, but the idea is that to build your presence, you have something like this. And it doesn't need to necessarily look like this. It can also look like this, and this is just simple use of a spreadsheet where you can sit and plan and go, what am I going to do? What am I writing about? Where's it going to go? Is it a blog? Is it LinkedIn? Is it YouTube? What do I need for it? Is there anything I can take from the previous writings? Has it gone online? Any notes? Again, if you look at this, you get an idea. You may be sitting going, well, I'm not that sure if I've got a lot of material. You so do. Your whole career has helped bring you material to this point. So looking at these calendars can give you an idea. And one thing, if you're doing this a bit more for yourself or in a freelance capacity, is you can even just use simple spreadsheets. This is one that was carried out for a whiskey firm, but the theme is the same in that every day you have a topic. Sunday you have something, Monday you have something, Tuesday you have something, Wednesday, and so on. You can very simply have straightforward topics. For example, if you were even talking about politics, in Scotland, politics is debated. One of the days politics is debated in the main chamber in the Parliament is a Thursday. So Thursday, if you're covering politics, could be about the Parliament. The Wednesday could be a roundup of what happened the previous week in the Parliament, and so on. Very quickly you'll start to get ideas that fall nicely into place to give you a regular output for ideas. For those using WordPress and their own blog, another very useful tool is something called the editorial calendar plugin. And if you're using WordPress, as we develop the WordPress blog, that is part of the first assignment for this. And if you haven't read assignment 1 yet through Moodle, I would encourage you to do so. This again will show you a way of doing it, what you can put down, and you don't have to panic. The first thing to do is sit and go, okay, how many days do I want to have an online presence? What have I got that I can put out there? If that's just a Monday and a Thursday, that's fine. As you get more comfortable with it, you may fill in more days. You may decide to keep some days blank. But the idea being that just as you do in your day job, you would sit and go, right, let's see what we've got that we can fill this with. Because everyone likes content, and there's a very reassuring quality to regular content. Just as people enjoy having a daily newspaper and a weekly newspaper, or daily and weekly podcasts, they like the familiarity of knowing that something will be there, and that allows you the luxury of building up an audience. Now, when it comes to Twitter, there's a considerable number of tools you can use to make your life a lot easier. The most common two are known as TweetDeck and Hootsuite, and I'm going to focus on Hootsuite purely because it's the one I use, but also I find it is very, very beneficial in that you don't need to be tied to a machine for it. You can go to any computer in the world, type in hootsuite.com, and as long as you have access to the majority of the internet, you should be able to access your own Hootsuite settings. It lives in that part of the computing world we call the cloud. You're not downloading anything to use it. But this is a look at the Daily Record newspaper in Scotland. If you access it via Twitter, that's what you see. A couple of tweets, people it's following, contact details, all the usual things that you get in a Twitter account. If you go to Hootsuite, this is what you get in the same size of screen. Now, obviously, this isn't the Daily Records layout, this is my own, but in that one screen you see all the mentions of Craig McGill, you see any direct messages sent to me, and you see the lists of my friends. And lists are a very important tool on Twitter. Regardless of where you are, there are other people online, there are other people talking on social media. So it's very useful in these early stages to go, okay, let me break my lists down. If this is an account you're going to use for personal and professional, you have a list for friends. If this is an account you're purely going to have for professional purposes, you can break people down by story categories. You can also have a list of fellow journalists. You can also have a list for any sort of hashtag that you wish to follow on a regular basis. Remember, for those of you not sure what it is, a hashtag is just a phrase put into a tweet that people will attach onto, and you can find out what everyone is saying about it. If you look at the screen in front of you, and I hope you are, you'll see that in the fourth column, just near the top, by Word Media Co, there's a hashtag with the hashtag BBC Scotland News, hashtag BBC, hashtag Scotland, hashtag media, and anyone clicking on any one of those will see what everyone in the world is saying on that hashtag. So if there are other people talking about hashtag BBC, then you'll see everyone talking about that, and then you can simply make that a list and follow it on a regular basis. And the beauty of this is that it means whenever you go into Hootsuite, just as whenever you go to Twitter, you're sent all the updates. The information comes to you. You're not having to run around various Twitter accounts to see what people are saying. You see it all instantly at a glimpse, and you can plan or respond as you need to. As I say, when you compare it to this, it's far, far more information. It's far, far more beneficial and an incredible time saver. If there's only one thing you take from today, I would encourage that. If you're using Twitter, please go onto a tool like Hootsuite or TweetDeck. You do have to log in if you go via hootsuite.com, but again, it's a straightforward setup. There are paid for options, but go for the inexpensive option. Go for the free option, actually. And if you're having any technical issues setting it up, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and I'll talk you through it. Now, something else that's been about for a while but still incredibly useful is known as RSS, and it stands for Really Simple Syndication. And I'll just jump through this quickly for those who don't know what it is. It basically means that instead of you going to a website every day and seeing if it's been updated, if you open whichever tool you use for RSS, you see what websites have been updated. And the beauty here is that can save you, a good chunk of time each day going and looking around a bunch of websites to see what people have been saying. You'll find out instantly what everyone's saying if you've got a nice RSS reader. And the BBC and other news sites all use RSS. The most popular RSS reader is known as Google Reader, and again, that's just been a benefit to many because it's run by Google, it's a central point, and people can access it again from nearly anywhere on the globe. Others move on and use tools like NetNewsWire, which just dresses up the Google Reader interface into a far prettier platform. And this is an example of how Google Reader looks. all of the lists you see in that, not links, sorry, all that you see in that list on the left hand side, that's all websites. Now, obviously, there is no way you could in one screen legibly have 10, 15, 20 websites, but this has it. This just takes the information and brings it to you. And as you can see from the main part of the screen, from the incredibly large column on the right, that's all the latest information from those websites coming through. So this person's account, they don't have to go through them all. They're just seeing it as it appears. This is how something similar appears in NetNewsWire. And this is actually from my own, and I have a setup where I can see 10, 15 journalist sites there, and instead of me having to visit those sites every single day, the column on the right brings them all to me. So it's an incredible time saver and a great way of keeping on top of topics. And on your own site, we'll be talking about making sure that you're very RSS friendly to help people out. Google Tools is another thing that's an incredible asset, and I'm going to concentrate a chunk of time here because these are the tools that will let you see what's working and what isn't. And for those of you who have some advanced knowledge of Google Tools, then you've got the next couple of minutes off. For those of you who don't, we're just going to have a quick chat about what Google does and the whole essence of it. Google, as you all know, is by large the world's biggest and best search engine. More than best, maybe I push. I find it very useful, but more than 90% of the world's searches take place through Google, and Google records all that information. When people come to your site, they leave a data trail, and that allows Google to see what's popular on your site, what isn't popular, how long people are staying on your website for, what phrases they're using to find you. But this is an incredible amount of information. Years ago, this would have been charged for, but now you can see a quick skim. Even this, this is just top level stuff. You can see what's being popular. How many people are reading it. Has it gone up or down? Is it a consistently popular post? How many people have clicked on it? How many people are clicking through? This data is phenomenal because even in days of newspapers, which are still with us fortunately, people buy a newspaper, and unless people go and say, oh yeah, I was talking about so-and-so's article, or I was watching so-and-so on the news, or listening to such and such a show on the radio, you don't actually know if you're having an impact. However, Google Analytics lets you see what impact you're having. One of the most basic tools you get from Google through a part of the site called Webmaster is the keywords on your site. Now, if you're writing about the media, social media, digital media, blogging, Twitter, Facebook communications, what you're seeing there is a winner, because you're going, well, hang on, that's the most common keywords. That's what Google thinks my site is about. Unfortunately, that site does refer, and that's what that is about. So it's good to be relevant. And again, as trained communicators and trained content providers, this is something we can easily do. You would be shocked at how many people struggle at this idea of how Google can see what they're doing and how Google uses the words that are on the web to promote that to the world. Again, this is just another quick look at the Google tools and how it's working. Again, another handy tool is something called Google Trends. And historically, this goes back to the fact that in days gone by, medical centres like the CDC and medical organisations only knew about outbreaks of things like the flu or any sort of pandemic after the fact. Once people were going to their doctors, once doctors were reporting it back, once orders for drugs were coming in. But then it was noticed that when people were falling ill, they were falling ill in their homes, but days perhaps before going to a doctor's, and they were Googling for the information. So Google now noticed that, well, if they can predict that trend, if people are going onto Google and say, there's a spike by orders of magnitude of people looking for cures for a cold or cures for a flu or cures for chickenpox, they can say, hey medical community, you might want a heads up on this. And they thought, well, hang on, let's expand that. What's everyone's searching for online at the moment? What's popular on Google? And so this tool called Google Trends. Here, for example, we can see that the top trending questions have been, items have included Facebook, YouTube, Google, download and so on. But it also tells you what's rising. So it's not just about what is the most popular. It's also what's bubbling under and coming through. And it's a fantastic tool to play with. You can set up so many parameters to see what's happening, to see what people are talking about. And again, it's a very useful tool to have as a journalist. Then again, you click through and you just get more information on what's trending, what's popular. This has been done at just after the Super Bowl, so it's obviously very relevant for those reasons. Again, this is just another look at the variety of what you get information-wise from Google. And I can't underestimate this, because it's just such a benefit to you as a writer, to use a producer of material, to see what people like on your sites and to see people liking what you're producing. One, there's the obvious gratification of learning that people are enjoying what you're putting out there, but it also lets you concentrate your career or your writing on what people are enjoying. It may well be that you think everyone wants to read about one topic, but in reality, the Google tools coming back to you show you the opposite. They say that you should be concentrating on something else. This is what gets the traffic to your site. And that's not to say there's not a market for everything. There certainly is. But the trick is making sure that you're engaging with that market and that market knows where to find you. And that's something we'll be coming back to later on in the course. Another very useful digital tool, a very great time saver and slightly more technical but worth considering, is this tool known as IFT. And it stands for if this then that, and it's a very simple setup. What happens with this is that you say, if this happens, then make this happen. Very, very straightforward. So for example, you can say, new things have appeared in my RSS feed, send me a text message. The weather is to change in my local area, send me a text message. Pictures have appeared on a certain website, please send them to this other site as well. Very simple. A trigger happens, if this, then an action happens, then that. It's very, very straightforward. And this is just a sample of the tools that it can link up with. As you'll see, very many of these are what digital journalists should be using and should be well versed in these days. And if there's anything there, the likes of Facebook Pages, Flickr, Foursquare, Google Drive, Google Reader, Gmail, there's no shocks there. Some of the other sites may not be to your taking, perhaps Pocket, Readability. Not everyone needs Salesforce, but if this then that can be a great little tool to maximise your presence. And an example may be you set it up so that your name appears in a Google alert. Have that put onto your Twitter stream. Have that pushed onto Facebook, so that people see what you've been up to or your work's been publicised. You write something on your blog, have that set up so that it pushes out to other platforms and to other avenues. It's just about making the workflow process a lot simpler and easy for yourself. Now, I'd like to set some challenges or targets for next week, and feel free to share these in the forums or feel free to get in touch via email. I'm more than happy just to see things at this stage shared in the forum, and it would be very useful for the wider community, I'm sure, as well. Find three uses that apply to you for IFT. I do still prefer saying if this then that, but you don't have to set them up, but just have a look through the range of tools that's on option there and come back and say, this would be useful for me, this would be useful for me, and this would be useful for me because. Also have a think about a personalised editorial calendar. Is there any way that would work either for a private blog that you do or for your professional work life? Is there something there? Again, you don't need to take this through to the workplace at the moment, but just have a think, is there a theme there that every Monday you could do something, every Tuesday you could do something, or, how often would you have material on your editorial calendar? Would you perhaps have pictures one day, audio another, a blog post the next? Think of these things and then see how you could bring something together. If Twitter is going to be a part of your digital tools, and it's going to be for the remainder of this course, please consider setting up Hootsuite or TweetDeck. You don't have to overly populate it, but set it up for your basic account and take it from there. Set up a couple of lists that may be of use to you and make sure you're following the Napier course account. Again, feel free to let us know of any Twitter handles that you're using so that we can make sure we're keeping in touch with you. Similar, while talking about Twitter, find 3 hashtags that are relevant. Here's a starter for everyone. Hashtag GurmChat. GurmChat. That's a gathering in the US where journalists get together to talk about things in the industry, share best practice and so on. Set up RSS and find a couple of feeds that work for you. Similarly, any Google Alerts that you already have, you can set Google Alerts up for RSS as well to save you actually having to read them in email. But that's also just a reminder, because we spoke about Google Alerts last week for yourself, but it may well be that you want to set Google Alerts up for others too. And explore these tools of Google Trends and Twitter trending as well, because Twitter shows you what's trending and what's popular. Just have a look at that and think, when you're looking at what's trending locally and on a larger scale, what sort of items you could get for stories out of that. Because it's always good if you can get into something that's trending. It increases your chances of being seen, it increases your visibility, and it increases your audience, which are all good things. And that concludes this week, and next week's going to be considerably longer, so I would suggest that you definitely have a good cup of tea or cup of coffee as we explore the writing for online. We explore the hows, the whys, the copyrights, the copy wrongs, and we start to really jump into, okay, we are already professional communicators, we're trained communicators. How are we making this work so that we can be found online, so that people use it online and that people share it online? But in the meantime, please don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any questions or queries. And thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing what you find in terms of links, RSS feeds, hashtags, and uses of if this then that. Take care.